How's it, everybody, and happy Friday to all of you wellness warriors. Woo, what a week. Well, the conversation we've been having, if you're joining in for the first time, is the conversation around our own personal power, how we sometimes are invited or tempted to give our power and peace away, and how by pausing and mindfully reclaiming ourselves, we can step back into those all-powerful zones of personal core essence power. So as I say, if you're just joining the conversation for the first time, that's great. There are a couple of other videos you can refer back to, so please feel free to do that. Just simply go onto my profile and you'll see all the videos, all 15 videos that we've been working through in the past couple of weeks. So the conversation continues now around power. And this week, one of the shares that I received on one of the comments of the videos was this idea of when taking responsibility for everything can start feeling like too much. And absolutely, this is, I think, an all-important conversation we need to be having regularly around having healthy boundaries. So on that note, I would be remiss if I don't do a shout out to my fellow wellness warrior, Ruby Garcia. Ruby, thanks again, sister, for making that amazing suggestion to read Henry Cloud's Boundaries. And folks, if you haven't yet, get yourselves a copy. It really is an incredibly sobering, humbling, and empowering read. And truth be told, you know, I always thought that I was doing pretty well in the area of having certain agreements with myself, having certain agreements with other people, and having those really important boundaries. But when I started reading this book, it was really clear to me, within a couple of pages really, that in many respects I didn't have healthy boundaries. And not having those boundaries often led to me repeating very unhealthy patterns. And for me, what that typically looks like is taking on too much. I have the heart of a first responder. I love being supportive towards other people. It's sometimes challenging for me to say no, and that has often led me to places where I just give and give and give, and I don't restore, I don't replenish. There were times that my self-care was non-existent, and obviously that led me to a place of feeling like I was on that hamster wheel, feeling like I was exhausted, feeling like I had very little to give, and honestly feeling like I was getting very little in return sometimes. And so the magic about having boundaries, having powerful, assertive, clear-cut boundaries for yourself and those around you, is that it makes way for having win-win relationships. Win-win relationships, win-win partnerships, win-win agreements. So what do I mean by win-win? And this is a concept that was introduced to me by another amazing wellness warrior. Shout out to Michelle Villalobos. Whilst I was part of her incredible mastermind group, this was one of the many conversations us girls had often. Win-win situations. So by that we mean, how can you enter into conversations, into agreements, into discussions where there's this pre-frame of it being mutually beneficial to everybody involved, right? And I think the first part of that conversation needs to start with yourself, and that's by checking in whether or not you have healthy boundaries in place. So some of the shares that have been coming through this week have been from people sharing with me how they work for other people, they work in very demanding environments. And I think the common thread that's been coming through for me, just as I read between the lines of many people's personal messages to me this week, is people are giving their power away as a result of not having those clear boundaries and those clear agreements. And I know from personal experience, when I in the past worked for an employer, there were many times that I felt like I was almost at the mercy, I guess, of what that organization expected of me, the contract that I'd signed, and whatever my boss was telling me to do or not to do. And now, all these years later, when I stepped into the space of being an entrepreneur for myself, I reflect back and I see how the truth is, many times when I was an employee, there were many, many times that I was giving my power away, because there were many times that I was feeling unhappy about certain things and I wasn't taking the responsibility to speak to the necessary people involved. I wasn't creating opportunity to really share my heart, agree on some, different picture for myself and really seek their enrollment in creating something different for myself in whatever team I found myself. And that was pretty much, that's really been the truth, I think, for most of the positions I've had, whether it was working in hospitality, whether it was when I was working in public relations, in marketing, in retail. Looking back, as I say, I see that there's that common thread of where I was giving my power away as a result of keeping myself from having very important and necessary conversations. So I think at this juncture, a lot of you, I'm very pleased to report from what I've heard and seen, you've embraced this idea of reclaiming your power. And I am just so excited for you, and I'm so grateful just that you've had this willingness to be open and receptive to a new concept. For those of you that might be feeling like you're still struggling a little in identifying what it perhaps looks like for you when you're in a more powerful zone as opposed to when you're feeling less powerful, my invitation to you is to continue being open and continue breathing into this idea of really becoming introspective and sensitive to where you might be feeling disempowered in your life. And so perhaps the following distinction will support you in tapping into that. So when I was studying at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, when I was doing my health coaching certificate, one of the most powerful distinctions IIN shared with us is there's this concept of primary food and this concept of secondary food. And so by secondary food, we're talking about the food that's literally on your plate, right? The food that you're putting into your mouth or not, that's nourishing you or not. So that is secondary food. When we talk about primary food, we're really speaking about soul food. So those all important pieces of the circle of life that feeds our soul. So what does primary food look like? That's when we start talking about your happiness in the area of your relationships, right? Your career, your physical exercise, and your finances and spirituality. Now there's many circles of life out there, like lots of different models, but this particular model, this very simplified version of the circle of life, I think is really powerful. Because it gives you an opportunity to check in with those areas of your life. And truth be told, you, wellness warrior, can be eating all the kale in the world, you can be drinking all the water in the world, but the truth is, if you are not experiencing balance in those other very critical areas of your life, you simply will not be well. If there's resistance and unease in any of those areas, that can often manifest into physical dis-ease in the body, or disease as we usually refer to it as. So whilst we're talking about the circle of life, perhaps there's an opportunity for you today to reflect on how you're doing with those very fundamental elements in your life. Where are you possibly experiencing disempowerment in the area of your finances, your spiritual life, right? Your physical body, your exercise, perhaps your relationships. Where are you possibly feeling unfulfilled or possibly seeking something bigger for yourself in that area? For me, it is always finances. That is honestly not the most empowered place of my life right now, and that is something that I am taking on. So my invitation to you, Wellness Warrior, dig deep, breathe into it, and have an honest moment with yourself and identify for yourself where today you are feeling those feelings of dis-ease or disempowerment. So on Monday, my husband and I started our day off with so much intention around this area in our lives. We woke up, we got ourselves ready, and we had a 7:30 a.m. meeting around our finances. And since then, we've put some necessary steps in place, necessary goals in place, and we're really going for it. But I must tell you, to be honest, between Monday and Tuesday and today, I started experiencing a bit of resistance in that area again. And that is okay. I'm here to just remind you and encourage you that that is okay. It's all part of the game. Sometimes you identify an area in your life that you'd like to transform, and you go for it and you're excited about it, and then all of a sudden a little bit of those, old patterns creep in, or that feeling of resistance creeps in, and that is, as I say, all okay, all perfect in fact, and part of the game. So what did I do with the resistance that I was experiencing today? Well, I decided to shake it up. If you missed yesterday's video, please go and have a look at that. I decided to shake it up by getting myself all showered and dressed up, put on some lip gloss, and I have decided that instead of having a usual happy hour or just a checkout on a Friday afternoon, I am going to check in intentionally right now after I speak with you, and go check in with those finances and continue pushing that mission forward. Right? Continue pushing that mission forward for myself, for my husband, for my family, for the very bright future I see for myself when that area in my life is flowing with more ease and grace. So, what could reclaiming your power in one of those areas of your life do for you? Breathe into that and honestly answer yourself today. What will more empowerment in your finances give you access to? What will more energy give you access to? What could possibly happen if you went and had a conversation with your manager, your supervisor, and enrolled that person in the idea that you have for yourself within the team that you are currently in? Maybe you see a possibility that they don't yet. What would happen if you went and shared that idea with them? And what could happen if they are enrolled in that possibility that you see for yourself and the team? And what if by having that courage and being that change catalyst, you switch things up for yourself, your colleagues, your family, your community, your city, right? Your country, and ultimately the world? What are the possibilities that you can imagine for yourself? This is something that I was sharing about earlier on my Instagram feed. So if some of you haven't gone and checked out my Affinity for Wellness Facebook page or my @Wellness Warriors Unite Instagram page, I invite you to go and check that out. There are lots of bits and pieces that I've been sharing for the past 2 years now. So there's plenty of inspiration there for you. And just yesterday actually, I was talking about this theme of taking responsibility and really acknowledging where perhaps, dear one, whilst you've been so focused on being angry with a loved one, being angry towards a supervisor, a colleague, the person that you're perhaps the most disappointed in is yourself. And I give you that to consider with all the love in my heart, because it's sometimes a tough thing to look yourself in the mirror and say, do you know what? The frustration that I'm experiencing right now, the hurt that I'm experiencing right now, is as a result of my action or my inaction. the consequences to my action or inaction. So Wellness Warrior, take a nice deep breath. It's Friday, we've made it this far, you are alive. You have an opportunity right now to turn a new leaf. And that is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this resistance by the hand and I'm going to skip off now and tackle my finances. I'd love to hear from all of you. I'd love to hear the wins that you are experiencing. I'd love to hear about your breakthroughs, your challenges, whatever is top of mind for you in and around this conversation of well-being. Okay, Wellness Warriors, lots of love to all of you. God bless. Reclaim that power and go for it. Rise, Wellness Warrior, rise. Bye now.